system thinking is an approach which has been now been increasingly used in public health and health policy and systems research, especially with the effort of the Alliance for Health Policy and Systems Research, which have brought out two special issues on system thinking studies, which was released one in 2012, another one in 2014. And before that, they had a flagship report, which again looked at this system thinking as an approach for implementing programs. I mean, not as much as a research methodology or research input. So with this, there is some kind of an interest in public health and especially in health policy and systems research to look at the system thinking approaches. The origin, which I talked about when we had this class on system complexity, origin of this complexity lens and system thinking approaches are not in health. It started in engineering, mathematics, and various disciplines have used it for their own their own applications. It's also quite broad. Several methods are packed under system thinking approaches. Basically, all of them look at system complexity and use certain particular way of approaching and understanding that system complexity. So what is system thinking? This is something which we talked about earlier. So basically, this involves approaches which are used to actually tackle or look at the systems which are showing increased property of complexity. And we know, from our previous session, we have learned actually different system complexity characteristics and system phenomena. If you remember which all were there, some of the system phenomena and characteristics which we discussed earlier. Phase transition is one, path dependence, time dependency, emergent behaviors. Yeah, and we also, from our own experiences, that many of the events which had happened or something, many things from our own experience can be related to each of these kind of phenomena. Or sometimes a single public health function, how it actually evolves, carries several features of system thinking or the complexity thing. So then system thinking is basically about various methodologies which can be used to actually look at this. And this is why we need a system thinking approaches in public health policy and systems research, because most public health interventions, as we talked earlier, are complex. Therefore, it shows complexity characteristics. They are not totally predictable, so sometimes we need some level of predictions, understanding, because if it is too complex, if it is too unpredictable, and if everything relates to unintended consequences, then it's very difficult for us to actually work in public health. And also, there is no point in actually doing health policy and systems research. Then we also talked about, it could lead to certain patterns, and patterns can be observed. So how do we actually observe these patterns? Whether some kind of an approaches will help us to observe such patterns is what is being addressed under. I'll talk about basically three different, in fact only two different system thinking approaches. System dynamics is one approach which actually deals with the interactions, the effect of system interactions within the system, and how it is related, one interaction is related to the other, and how various parts of the systems are in, how these relationship between various parts create a system phenomena. That is the system dynamics system dynamics approach basically address. There is also social network analysis, which is based on an assumption that the complexity is actually created by networks which are within the system. When we talked about these interactions, we also said that the interactions are not very random all the time. It has certain patterns. I mean, if you closely observe, certain nodal points through which these interactions pass through quite frequently. So that shows that there is some level of pattern. One example which we talked about to reflect on this network characteristic of the system related to the sexual partners. At a large societal level, if you look at it, there are certain nodal points, and through which many of the these interactions are passing through. So one can observe at that level. There are studies which look at how the information flow through the system, where again you will see certain nodal points which will probably be connected by various agents in the system. So that is what is the social network analysis basically talk about. Then there is agent-based modeling, which is a third one, which is probably about, which is area which I am not familiar with. I am not going to talk to you about that. There's no study based on this, but this actually talks about how individuals are connected with other individuals, the agents, how each agent is unique in the system, and how their relationships and interests are actually creating the system complexity. Out of which the first two we will be discussing in detail. The system dynamic approach, what it tries to do in terms of its as a system thinking approach, is help you to qualitatively conceptualize the system behavior. And it actually talks about this causality and feedback loops. You probably remember we talked about the feedback loops, both positive and negative. The other name for positive and negative feedback loops are the reinforcing and balancing loop. And then, these feedback loops, basically what they do, they actually talks about what, if there is a change in the system, what actually creates a change, or if there is an interaction, who influences whom, which agent influences the other agent, or which it need not be agent all the time, it can be even certain entities, which entity influence the other entity. And then if you look at this particular example, you will see that, can you look at the direction of the arrows and make some sense out of it? This particular arrow, what is the direction? It goes from, what does it mean? And it's got a positive sign. What does that mean? Probably? Maybe they both move on the same direction. The more birth, more population. And then more population means more death. And there is also some lines here. It actually denotes the delay in the system. It need not immediately happen. It would take some time to actually reflect in terms of increase in number of birth. And same happens here too. But here some signs and directions are different. So more population means more death. And there can also be some delay here. And when increased death happens, it can affect the population. Here, if you look at it, the R is actually denotes the reinforcing loop. When you have, this situation, when more birth lead to increased population, which can also result in increased birth. So then it's actually a reinforcing loop here. When you have two different variables which are connected, and increase in one variable will also result in the other variable, it is connected by an arrow, and it's positive direction because both are increasing simultaneously. So these kind of relationships can be captured using the system dynamics approaches. And this particular paper is again based on a study in which I was part of, and this was looked at Kerala immunization scenario, where immunization services which actually went up to a level of about 90% in almost across the state, and then within a very short span of about 5-6 years, some of the districts in Kerala started showing a drop in immunization coverage, and it went from very high level of about 90% to 65, 60% in some of the districts. Not just that, because of almost 7-8 years of such situation actually started showing vaccine preventable diseases in the community. Many things which were sort of eliminated from the community, like diphtheria, tetanus, and all started coming back to society in Kerala. So then that is the context in which this study was designed. So basically immunization is a public health function, though we can assume it as very simple public health interventions or public health function. It can also be, when it is actually delivered in a societal community settings, and that too on a state level scale, then it can be really complex. And this particular context which I talked about, Kerala, as you know, because compared to many other states, the level of health awareness in the state has gone up quite early. So from late 80s onwards, we had quite fairly high levels of immunization coverage. People were accepting it. But there was also a phase before that where immunizations were resisted. In sense, there were not many in the community were willing to go for immunizing especially immunizing of their children, because initially people it's something, some people will come and tell you that it's good for you, but you have no way to actually verify that whether it's good or not. So that kind of a situation. Then it's also a foreign body, you're injecting it. There's a pain related to it. There are minor side effects like fever and discomfort. You'll have to go and get it. So there is, initially there need not be a demand. In fact, there will be some level of resistance. If you look at that particular period, which actually starts from, because our data, if you look at it, it starts from our NFHS data. So from NFHS 1, if you look at it, from that period itself, Kerala has shown quite high immunization coverage. And then in most of the districts actually either stayed at that high level, or in some of the states it actually went up, if you look at it. And then some districts in Kerala, if you look at it, it has actually shown a very drastic drop. This particular data is related to the district of Kozhikode, Calicut, which has shown a very drastic drop in immunization. Similarly, there were 3-4 other districts which also had shown similar drop in immunization. And this is actually probably may not be really something which can be explained. People used to say several reasons. I mean, there are people who accuse that there are campaigns against immunization, and that could be the reason why the coverage went down. There were also issues like supply constraints that people talked about. Some said because people have they are not seeing the disease. The fear of vaccine preventable disease has gone from the community, and that's why it's dropping. But then still, it's only happened in certain parts of the state, not everywhere across the state. Not just that, when this has happened, because it happened over a period of 5 to 6 years, state also had put in a lot of effort to correct this. Every single A&M was monitored by people specially appointed to tackle the problem of immunization, the decreasing immunization coverage. There will be significant IEC campaigns, including they brought in celebrities to talk about this. Immunization was constantly promoted as one of the key issues, priority of the state, and then there were several advertisements in the media. Minister himself used to go to visit various PHCs, and whenever this polio campaign used to happen, there's high profile people will come and inaugurate that. So there is all normally what we expect out of the system to correct such scenario where happened. But nothing of this seems to be playing a role in actually changing the situation at that point. And that's the context in which the study was carried out. Along with this, though I had two districts to make a comparison and study, and one of the districts showed didn't have any effect of vaccine resistance, so any signs of vaccine resistance. The other district which I looked at had significant levels of vaccine resistance. In that particular area, there was a special campaign against Japanese encephalitis, which was actually vehemently resisted by people. This is in a district where otherwise immunization is accepted quite well, and there was a high coverage. But a special vaccination against JE, which was organized as a school-based immunization program, was resisted, and there were open resistance against that. There were reports of violence in some of the schools when the health workers tried to enter and vaccinate children, etc. The other feature which is also important to know in Kerala is that the media penetration is quite high. So every vaccine related incidents are picked up by the media, and usually it come up in the news channels. Most of the resistance and the debates, public debates around vaccinations were related to polio campaign, which is seen as a very campaign with a lot of state, the political will to actually carry out, and with a lot of resources being and organized with a lot of effort. I mean, not just an effort of the health department alone. It was an effort of the government, the state itself. And most of the debates were around that, and the people actually resisted that. So that is the context in which study was. I mean, these things were known already, but then how what we basically inquired was that particular social phenomena. What kind of a complexity, who are the people involved, and why, unless we know that complexity, who are the agents and what kind of a mechanisms with which these resistance come up in the society, we may not be able to identify where one need to intervene or what kind of a strategies would work. I mean, that's where we try to look at that complexity and use this complexity lens to understand that. It's actually a particular phenomena which result in then a particular identity. And this is in fact an attempt to actually look at what actually creates a vaccine resistance in our Indian society. The very purpose of showing this particular study is not to really talk about the immunization issue, but to rather tell you about how this system dynamics model was used, and the causal loop diagrams were used to actually explain this. This is actually particular to the period when vaccines are generally accepted in the community. And if you look at a particular period in Kerala where vaccines started getting wider acceptance in the acceptability in the society. This is a period when the vaccine availability was also made. They ensured that there was vaccine availability. There were efforts by various groups. I mean, there were field workers who perhaps played the maximum role in making it very popular, because they enjoyed some kind of a trust in the community, because this was the period before ASHA, so the ANMs. We used to make house visits, talk to the families about vaccinations, and over a period of time, vaccines were seen as some sort of a socially acceptable thing. And in the Kerala society, it's almost reached to a level of vaccines has become sort of a social norm. And if you don't vaccinate, that parents are not seen as a full or complete parent. I mean, it's seen as one of the first activities which a parent do to children. I mean, it's been seen as something so powerful, as also a powerful social symbol to express their affinity with the children, etc. And if you look at various arrows and the signs, which actually talks about that contribution of different groups in that. There's community health workers, their constant engagement with community households played a major role. There were reinforcement from many health system actors, even media. Media also constantly supported something like this. Overall, it actually led to some sort of a particular scenario which Salima, which you talked about earlier, when over a period of a generation, when people actually started seeing the benefit of vaccinations, they actually started accepting vaccination with the acceptability levels of vaccination has gone up several fold higher. So which actually perhaps explains sudden increase in vaccinations levels in Kerala society. Though I don't have a data, I mean this is from the experiences of people who said up to a particular period they had resistance in Kerala society, and after that vaccination has become a complete acceptable thing across the society. And then when we move to the the phase when vaccination is actually shown to cause resistance in at least in some parts of the state, what we see is basically several new actors, because earlier when you looked at it, it was actually the actors and the system complexity was much limited compared to the phase after this. There were only limited actors, and they actually won, all their interest matched together, then things started happening. But then this particular phase we see many new actors who come into the picture. And as I told you earlier, the entire resistance to vaccination actually started with this campaign against polio. When it initially launched in Kerala, there were wide support. In fact, entire society was welcoming it. They were celebrating it. Including media, everyone was welcoming that. But it reached to a particular stage when started showing resistance. The first people who opposed a polio campaign in Kerala were academic doctors. I mean, they had certain scientific rationale why something like this is not required in Kerala. Next resistance actually came when the Kerala Government Medical Doctors Association, which actually went on a strike in 2000, early 2000. They, because government doctors play a major role when you actually implement polio campaign. They actually used polio campaign as a bargain for their service conditions, because they were about to go for a strike. So they decided to hold a strike just before the polio campaign. And then to justify that, they reported many of the opposition raised by the government, the academic doctors, based on certain scientific rationale. They also actually used as a reason. For them, it was actually a bargaining point for with the government, and the government, because a polio round which was about to come, because of that, government actually settled that. But on that particular occasion, this became a very widely talked about kind of a thing. Initially, the society started, many people in the society started talking about this issue. Till that point, polio was never seen as something which can cause some kind of a problem. So that is a starting point. And then there were also other people who actually took notice of this. One was the homeopathic doctors. Homeopathic doctors, because they were also quite organized in the state, and they were, earlier also they were not really supportive of immunization, but they were not actually taking a step or a position against immunization in the state. But this is a state where the allopathic systems of medicine and homeopathy had a very strong confrontation earlier, for a long period of time. And the history goes back to 1970 when the state university, Kerala University, had decided to start a bachelor's program in homeopathy. And it is reported as the first time a bachelor program in homeopathy happened anywhere in the country, or I think in the country. And then there was a very strong opposition from the medical doctors. Even the medical colleges went on strike, and it actually got delayed for another 5 years, and after that the state started it in any case. But then this was the first round of confrontation with the allopathy and homeopathic system. After that, then there were effort by government to train homeopathic doctors and Ayurvedic doctors in surgical procedures. Then there was another round of strike in the state, which again was stalled. So there were history of confrontation between both systems. And at this particular point, the Association of Homeopathy actually took up this issue, and they actually propagated against campaign, and all campaign was not against routine vaccinations. All were against the special campaign against polio. Then this was also, taken up by various other actors in the community. When the moment some people started talking about it, it actually emboldened many other people in the community, the religious leaders. Then there were naturopathy people, environmentalists, and there are a number of people who actually started talking about it. And there were also, even people who wanted to question the state. They also talked about vaccination as a means with which, how the state is trying to take control of the families and people. They talked about in media, not just in media, sometimes in open confrontations. In fact, every time when polio round happens, there will be a mass protest by homeopathy practitioners. I mean, and some of them will get arrested for a day. And the system response is also equally interesting. To counter this homeopathic association's propaganda, what the health service, what they did was the minister has issued an order that all homeopathic government dispensaries will be converted into polio booth. And this was announced on the previous day through a press conference. The fact I wanted to say is that some incidents like this, which when happens in the system, it can actually have ripple effect across the system. So it could be one single issue which was raised by at one point, which actually caused a ripple effect across the system. And the reason is actually time dependent. Sometimes the history of long confrontation between various actors. And what we see here is a series of, because of this, one causing the other. When you have a public protest, the media picks it up. When media picks it up, it gets reported more. When it gets reported more people come to know about it. Then it will result in lesser vaccine acceptability, lesser coverage. When it's become lesser coverage, which again gets picked up by media and report that there is very few people actually got immunized this year, which again leads to lesser acceptability of vaccine. So there were a series of similar kind of feedback loops one can observe in the community. I mean, these loops, if we can say, for example, if you look at this particular one, you also have a society in which the vaccine preventable diseases have almost no longer there. I mean, it's which actually got eliminated because of several years of very high levels of vaccinations. So that fear of vaccinations have gone. Many generations have not seen diseases like diphtheria. People they don't recognize what exactly is that. Then that fear of vaccinations have gone. Because of that, that's some sort of a balancing loop. Otherwise, what we expected in the earlier phase was a reinforcing loop, which got converted into a balancing loop. So these are some of the phenomena. But this particular model will also help you to make some assumptions. Many of you can also see some of them as sort of dotted lines, which we were in a way when we use this technique. When we use this system dynamics model, when you create different interactions and connections, you can also probably make some assumptions. That, for example, when the prevention of diseases get affected and when society will start showing increased levels of vaccine preventable diseases because of the low coverage in vaccinations, it can probably positively affect, I mean, in a sense, it can influence the trust in vaccinations again. Then those kind of assumptions one can make based on causal loop diagrams. So there was several learning from the study, but my intention was to actually how one could look at a broad range of actors who could come into play when something like this happens, and how one can use causal loop diagrams to make these connections and make some predictions at some point, or make comprehensive understanding about the issues involved in it.
So all of this data was through personal interviews?
Yeah. So the idea of this particular session was to introduce you to various techniques which people are using, which are to basically understand complexity in a better sense. System dynamics, social network analysis, and then agent-based model. And out of which I only talked about two of them. Which were they? System dynamics. And what's the difference between these two? Conceptually, they have, they both look at complexity from different approaches. It's basically at the level of understanding of complexity. I don't think it changes from one approach to the other. But probably the approach, the tools which they use are different. And in system dynamics, basically what they look at is, the basic understanding is that the interactions of agents and entities within the system matters. Therefore, one need to understand that changes, the dynamics of those changes. Then you would be in a position to probably understand the complexity better. Social network, which probably look for networks, the networks of agents which are connected either through information or through their some other forms of interest or actions, and then they look for focal points within those social networks. And we briefly discussed two studies. Both of them have used probably some very basic ideas around these two concepts. We haven't discussed about agent-based modeling. One reason why we didn't discuss, because I'm not sure about any particular study which actually used this. I mean, there are a number of studies, but to understand that, you would probably require a different level of capacity. I mean, so I searched for some articles which could probably explain this. And many of those studies have actually used computer programs to understand about individual behavior, what motivates. It's probably, most of those conceptualization of individual behavior comes from rational choice theories. And based on that, if you have a large number of complete, and they probably sample different people and identify those behaviors and use certain software to actually make some predictions and patterns, look for patterns. So, but then another one I gave it for the reading. Could you able to read that? Sense making one, which is not a very conventional system thinking approaches, but it's something which is very useful when you think in terms of complexity and try to intervene in a system. It actually touch upon various aspects of complexity. It actually talks about system thinking interventions, a particular form of system thinking intervention, what they call as sense making, in a very localized L system in a part of Cape Town, which is that place. It's called Mitchell's Plain. It's a resettlement colony of colored people in Cape Town, and which came into existence at the time of apartheid. A lot of people were shifted from other areas and moved to this particular area, and because of that history, and also because of various other factors, there is a significant level of complexity. Though the overall performance of that particular district showed, and fairly very high levels of health outcomes. There were pockets within the district, and also it is generally considered as a difficult district to intervene. So this team from Cape Town University and University of Western Cape, they formed the research community, and they actually worked through some mid-level managers in the system. So how did they work? I mean, what was the concepts behind this? I mean, they understood that it's a really complex system, and in a complex system, if you need to work, you probably need to understand that system better. What, basically what the essence of what they did is they tried to develop the adaptive capacity of the system. They through iterative processes, finally first trying to understand about perspectives of various actors involved in it, and then based on that learning they identified few managers and placed them with a lot of training, so that they are in a position to make changes, and then a lot of reflections and retrospective processes involved in it. One reason why I looked at this paper is because I don't want you to go with the message that system thinking is something which is very involves a lot of software and complex and feedback loops, but it is, in actual practice, it is about you create that adaptive capacity, and it's about how to create that adaptive capacity of the system. I think all different concepts actually talks about working in a complex systems. As a researcher, how do you actually employ certain methodologies so that you derive knowledge out of it. So they follow realist evaluation, follow a particular method, but everything deals with complex systems. I mean, that's one reason why we have HPSR, and it comes from an understanding that systems are complex. So, but then when do you use any one of these system thinking approaches? Can it be used at any context? All systems are complex, but then probably the approaches which we talked about, we can use it in some context, not everywhere. What I feel is that you may be able to use it better when there is some level of policy resistance or program resistance. That could be one area where you can think about using one of these techniques.